I'm just going to wait a little bit as people trickle in and get their sound working, their audio or their video. You can turn your camera on or off. It's up to you, whatever you're most comfortable with. We're also live in our Facebook group, our Montessori Thrive Facebook group. So if you're joining us from there, welcome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So you'll notice that when you come into the meeting, you're muted. This is just, because there's a few people on the call, just to avoid distractions, but you are of course welcome to stop me at any point, ask questions. I will ask a couple questions throughout the presentation and just kind of see what your school does, things like that, to exchange ideas. So feel free to unmute yourself or utilize the chat. So welcome. Today we're doing a little open office hours, which means it's a little bit more casual, a little bit more laid back. We don't have a speaker, it's just the Nido Marketing team here. And we're going to be talking about best practices for testimonials and surveys. We have Camille here, who is our executive director at Nido Marketing. So some of you may already know us from dropping in at our town hall. So if it's your first time, welcome. I've got a little presentation to kind of keep the conversation on track. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, and let's go ahead and get started on our presentation here. All right. So as the academic year comes to a close, there's a lot of things that I'm sure you guys are doing. You guys are probably running around doing a million things, saying goodbye to some of your students, some of your families, figuring out how to close out the year, as well as just figuring out how you're gonna have a good start for the next year. This is a great time to think about end of year surveys and collecting feedback from your community. So we're here to talk about best practices for this in the Montessori space specifically. So let's go ahead and get started. So welcome. So I'd love to know, and you can drop in the chat or you can unmute yourself. How does your school ask for feedback? Do you send out forms? Do you ask parents in person? What do you do at your community to ask for reviews or feedback from staff or alumni or parents? I'll pause a little bit. And maybe you don't do anything yet. Maybe this is why you're here. You want to learn how to get started with that. Let's see here. We have a comment in the chat. Online survey from Courtney. That's great. It's probably the most convenient way to do it and what most people are doing now. So that's great. Also Google reviews. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but all right. So let's look at a few ways to get constructive feedback from your parent community. Keyword here is constructive. I know it's hard, especially when parents have so much on their plate and they're so busy, but we'll share some tips and best practices for this. So first things first, when to ask for feedback. Drop in the chat when you tend to ask your parents, whether it's at the end of the year, whether it's halfway through. What is usually the time that you check in with them for feedback, testimonials, things like that? We know that asking parents for their time is extremely difficult. And usually when we send out these online surveys or forms or whatever format your school uses, rarely do we get the responses that we're looking for. It's typically hard for us to get a few good responses. I think parents maybe just have flooded inboxes. I see a comment here in the chat. When they're happy from Camille. Yes, that's probably the ideal time. Figure out when your community is usually, asking less questions, maybe giving less pushback, things like that is probably a good time. I think it's good to be observant. I think as Montessorians, we're great at observing how people are doing, how they're feeling, how they're responding. So you can kind of feel out when are good times to ask for feedback. Usually, and this was actually brought up by our co-founder, Matt Hillis, who runs Bergamo Schools in California. He said a great time to ask for end of school, for reviews or testimonials or surveys is actually near the end of the school year when parents are experiencing that high feeling maybe seeing their children graduate or have a farewell ceremony. That's a great time to ask. Tracy says when there isn't an urgent issue, that's great. Again, I think it's all about feeling out when is a great time to ask parents for some of their time. Another great time maybe is towards the end of each semester, fall or the spring semester, which would be now. I think what's great about waiting until the end of the semester is usually those are times where things might be winding down. You might be having some events. I know some schools have winter festivals or things like that where parents can participate in the school. Those are usually times where parents are happy. They're usually seeing a little bit more of the results of your hard work at the Montessori school. Jennifer says here, feels like testimonials are good to get when they're feeling happy, but feedback at any time. End of year also feels like a natural and expected time. Yep, that's great. Yeah, so I think this naturally would be kind of a perfect window to step in and ask for testimonials and things like that. Of course, feedback, like you said, great to collect at any and all times.
Yeah, that was a little bit tongue in cheek, but if there is a time when a parent is having a conversation with you and they're happy about something, that is a great time to ask, hey, I'm great. It's so great to hear that. Would you mind, for gathering testimonials in particular, this is a little separate than feedback. Feedback is, at any time about anything, but specifically for testimonials, there might be a natural time where it feels natural to ask them if they're already sort of gushing positively about the school, then just kind of ask, hey, would you mind, writing a couple sentences down and reviewing us on Google or wherever it is. So clearly, feedback is a little different than a testimonial. So those are kind of like two classes or two ways to think about it. I just wanted to clarify that. So.
No, definitely. Great. All great points. Another thing I wanted to add to the presentation as well, because one of the most, stressful processes for parents would be the enrollment process, everything from sending an application, getting their child settled into the school, those first few transitionary days. This could be an opportunity for you to also get feedback about specifically the enrollment process. So if this is a part of your overall process, it might be nice to ask parents, how did you feel that your transition into school went? How did you feel that enrollment went? Was it difficult? What areas would you improve? Would you recommend the other parents go through this process? So you can also look at it in that kind of more segmented way of specifically in this area, or specifically moving from toddler to primary. How did you feel that transition went? So you can be specific as well with your feedback questions. So first things first, I think this is probably the way that most schools collect feedback or run surveys, is to send out a community-wide email. I feel like if you don't do this already, you definitely should be doing it because it never hurts. Sending out a form via email is usually just the most basic way to do it. It's also the easiest. A CRM makes this a lot easier. If you don't know what a CRM is, it's a client relationship manager that just helps you do this. And why I say a CRM makes this easier is because it makes it automated. It also allows you to just send it periodically every year, at the end of every semester, you can ask for feedback. I just want to go over a few things to remember when it comes to email forms, and then I'm going to have Camille do a little demo on how to use our CRM. For those of you who have our Montessori CRM, how to do how to create a feedback form on our CRM. So first things first, just a few things to consider here. A great thing to do is consider making your forms anonymous. This just kind of, makes parents a little bit more eager to participate honestly, knowing that, maybe they have some criticisms and they just don't want to have their name associated to that. So it might be helpful to get more honest feedback that way. Keep questions short and to the point. Try to limit your open-ended questions like, oh, what would you improve, ? And you have them fill in the blank. Try to keep those to just maybe 2 or 3, and the rest can be maybe scale questions or yes or no questions, multiple choice. This just helps to keep it easier and quicker for parents to complete. It makes it a little less intimidating than them having to write several paragraphs. Again, you want to make this as easy as possible so that you get more responses. When you send out forms, make sure they can be completed in 5 minutes or less, to my previous point, and say that in your email as well. So, it'll take you 5 minutes or less to finish our review form, and it helps our school find areas to improve the experience for your child. So make sure to mention that so parents know that when they click on the link to go on the form, they're not preparing to dedicate 10, 15 minutes of their time. It's going to be really quick and painless. If you want to collect more testimonials or Google reviews, you can invite parents to leave a Google review at your school at the end. I'll talk about why you might not want to do this. It really depends when we get into testimonials. I mean, really, ultimately, when you ask for Google reviews, you want to be strategic and ask families who are having a better experience at your school, because obviously you don't want to get a negative review, but ultimately it's great to have more reviews because parents do look at that when they're choosing to enroll. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second because Camille's going to do a little demo on how to use our CRM. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Camille quickly.
Sure. It's just trying to prepare for doing this.
And if you have any questions, I mean, this is an open office hour, so I know some of you may have access to our CRM and some of you don't, but this is kind of a little, it's good to check in with you guys and make sure that if you have any questions on how to use it or making sure that you guys are using it to the full potential.
Right. I think I'll share my screen then, and just kind of doing this on the fly. I don't have anything really ultra prepared for this. So, but this is our CRM. So as Camilla said, this is what all of our websites come with this, or you can even, we offer this separately as well. This one is tied up to our demo site, which is at nidosite.com. So because this is a live site, sometimes we get a lot of funny data in it because it's just somebody just decides to interact with the site. The CRM will pick all that up. But in any case, in order to create a form, like a kind of a feedback form, it's pretty easy. If you go over here to sites and then form builder, and this is where, in addition to, for example, a general inquiry form, here's like a review form that I just started to put together, but you can define any questions that you want. And by not putting the name and email, the CRM is not going to be able to connect it to one of your contacts. So that will make it truly anonymous, so that you can emphasize that with the people that you're sending it to. And these were just a couple of what we call custom fields, but any contact here in the CRM. And so by submitting the form, it'll create a contact, but you can define any number of custom fields. So like a question. So here I'll just add, I'll just year review, and I'll just call this the same. How was your year? And it's a contact form. So we'll save that. It's just a sample one here. And then if I go back to my form builder here, and I'm over here under custom fields, I should see, I'm not sure it'll show at the bottom here. Yep. So it's really just as easy as dragging it right on the form. And then, you just want to add a button on it to submit, and then save the form. And then here, you can it'll grab the link, and that form will show up on a page on its own. So you can just email this link to your parents, and they'll be able to easily complete the form, and it will be anonymous. The other thing, should we talk about reputation management now here, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, so this would be for like a really specific, this form, like whatever specific questions you wanted to ask, you could obviously build that in and send this to your families. So here, these are all the contacts. So these are all you might have your current parents. I just have a few in here because this is a sample, but you could just easily create a automation workflow and select all your current parents and say, okay, drop them into a specific workflow, which is really just a series of emails that you've built up, or an email that is going to ask for that review. The other thing now, when we get to more like testimonials, the CRM has a great platform for managing that. So under reputation here, it shows you, it's connected to your Google My Business page. So it'll show you your reviews. Now this one doesn't have any in it, so it's not a great demo, but I did send this sample one out. But you can just basically here, you have a review link that's specific, and then it can send a text message here. So this is where you can customize what your review request looks like. And then there's also email. So that would be the SMS message, and this is the email. So you kind of design this once. So it might be a situation where you had a great conversation with a parent, and then you say, hey, can I send you a link to review the school? And then it's as easy as send review request, and you put their name in and then their email, and it'll automatically, I'll send it to myself. Oops, all my different aliases here. And it's just going to send it to me, and then I'll get the email with the link, and it'll show up on the Google page. So as a review. So it's a really great way to manage your, and it's really easy to manage your requests for reviews. So hopefully that's helpful. I went through it really quickly, but if anybody has any questions, does anybody have any questions about that? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the chat. So in one way, it's, customized forms to request feedback, and you can use this for anything, really. And you can even set up as a survey where they might get multiple screens. And then the other piece is really managing your online testimonials, or the reviews. I highly recommend that you have them go to, even if you don't have a CRM, you can still grab your Google My Business review link and send that out, because that's going to be great. You can always cut and paste a Google review to your website. So how can we ask nicely to leave a review? Do we have an email template? I think we do, right?
We do. Yeah, I have it linked later in this presentation. We have a template email that you can use to reach out to parents. I'll share that later in the presentation. So great question. Yeah. Luckily we have one.
Yeah. And the other thing, just kind of more in best practice, thinking about that, is it's really great. And this is where the CRM or something like it, but it can be as easy as setting up a monthly reminder to yourself or something like that, to, hey, ask for a review, is you really want to build up like that bank of positive testimonials, so that if that inevitable not so positive one comes in, then it just feels like a blip in a sea of great reviews. So if you don't have a lot of reviews already and the kind of a bad one comes in, then it has greater visibility, I guess, because it's been you don't have as many to kind of dilute it. So again, just regularly asking, just have it sort of on your calendar. Find a parent that you think is you know, had a good experience recently and is willing to send in a review, whether it's every other week or even once a month, is better than not having something regular. So, yeah.
Definitely. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. One moment. All right. Yeah, so as Camille mentioned and showed on the CRM, there's a lot of benefits to having it all automated. It's so much easier to send out to a contact list. You can, of course, also use Google Forms, but you're still going to have to do a few more things manually that way. Where when you use a CRM, you can just create the form, you can revisit it every year, you can send it to your contact list directly, you can send it via text, which brings me to my next point here, which is utilize SMS, which Camille kind of demoed how you could do that on our CRM as well. It's just another way to reach parents. If you feel that you send out emails looking to receive some surveys and you don't get a lot of response, maybe it's time to start utilizing SMS. Oftentimes parents are just swamped when it comes to emails. They might just automatically delete it or overlook it, seeing as we all know they do with our newsletters sometimes, with school newsletters. So maybe a text, it's a little more, you know, they might be willing to check that a little more, keep it short and sweet again. I think when you send an SMA survey, there's a couple of best practices that are a little bit different from email, because when someone has their computer in front of them or their laptop, they might be willing to type up something, so you can include a little bit more open-ended questions. I think that when you use SMS surveys, you should avoid open-ended questions just because it's a little more pesky. Keep things really brief. Again, it's important to reiterate that it will only take 5 minutes or less to complete. Again, consider making those forms anonymous and offer incentives. This goes for all emails. I know this was a couple of town halls ago, probably a year ago now. We had a brief discussion about reviews and surveys. And there was a school that said, you know, when you submit a review or a survey, you get entered into a raffle to win a $10 Starbucks card. Again, this is great for if you're trying to build up your reviews, if you have none for your school, just to kind of incentivize parents. Maybe they'll be more willing to send in their opinions that way. Of course, you don't have to do this, but it never hurts if you feel that you're not getting the responses at all. So what questions to ask? So we have a couple of templates and resources here. We'll post this presentation with all the links as well. If you're a Montessori Thrive member, all of these resources are available for you to download and use for your school. So for those families who chose to leave, we have our farewell survey here that kind of just asks about their experience with the school, why they're leaving, whether their child is aged out of a program, or if they, you know, moved cities or just chose to go with another early childhood program. Our template is in a Word document, but you could easily add these questions to a form in our CRM or in a Google survey as well. So feel free to use those questions. I think it's something like 20 questions, something like that, but you don't have to use all of them, but we do have a template available to you. So what questions to ask when it comes to the families that you have currently at your school? So I know we had a conversation about this in our forum a while back. Somebody asked, what is the best way to format a school satisfaction survey? We think it's great to send these out, you know, at least once a year for families who are choosing to continue in your community. This will allow you to check in with those current families, see what your school is doing well and what areas need work. It's really important for retention, because if your families are choosing to stay, it's important to understand why. That can be a great selling point for then parents who choose to enroll. You can explain, you know, parents choose to stay with us because they feel that, you know, they have a strong community here, or they feel that their child is getting specialized attention from a guide who's observant. Things like that are great to understand about your parent community. So just a little example here of one. Scales like this are great because they're really easy for parents to fill out. They don't have to, you know, handwrite anything or type anything up. Again, you can put this on a Google form or on a CRM form. It's very easy. Just here are some questions. I'll pause here so you guys can take a look, but just some basic questions about office staff, facilities, teachers. These are the kinds of questions you can ask. You can, of course, put whatever other questions you feel would give you the data that you need to move forward into your next year. But I just wanted to point out that the scale format is great. It's a little less intimidating. It's super easy. And obviously you want to be in the 4 and 5 area. If parents are circling 1 and 2, those are definitely areas that you can look to improve. And maybe next year you can ask questions that expand on that specific topic so that you know that you've maybe improved what you needed to. I wanted to also say that it's good to add in a little bit of those open-ended questions like this. Keep it to 2 or 3. These are the great ones, I think, to do open-ended. What do we do well? What could we do better? If you could change one thing immediately, what would you change? I don't think you need any more open-ended questions after that, because this pretty much allows the parents to expand on the areas that you would need to improve or what you're doing really successfully at your school. And again, it's great to ask these every year if you can. I'm going to pause here for any questions or comments. If anyone has any great questions that they ask in their kind of school satisfaction surveys or in their farewell exit surveys as well, feel free to drop that in the chat. We know it's never easy to get criticisms, especially when I think everyone has had an especially difficult past 2 years. But even when looking on how you're handling COVID, getting that feedback is so important so that if this happens again years down the line, where you can improve or what you could do better. So those things are important to gather. All right. Testimonials, we're going back to our testimonial point because testimonials are the most important when it comes to your marketing plan. And here we like to talk about Montessori marketing a lot. That's our area of expertise. So while getting feedback and surveys are great for you as a business to understand where you can improve, how you can serve your families better, testimonials are great because you can show this to prospective parents. And nowadays, parents are always looking at testimonials. We look at testimonials for everything now when we're looking at what restaurant to eat, where to travel. Everywhere online, you can find reviews and testimonials for pretty much anything. And you bet that parents are looking at this information when they're looking to enroll their child at a school. So it's incredibly important to gather testimonials regularly from families at your school, from alumni. So we're going to dive deeper into this. All right. So here are a few best practices when collecting testimonials, because there are a few differentiating factors from gathering surveys and feedback from parents to gathering testimonials. So first things first is, again, you want to be strategic. You must really decide what families are worth asking. Obviously, testimonials must always be truthful. You don't want to, say, please leave a good review. But you can feel out what families are a great fit for your school and which ones would take the time to write a testimonial that you feel reflects what your community is trying to achieve. So be observant. Again, if you have a meeting with a parent, they're really happy with the school, their child is doing well in the classroom. You feel that they're getting the full experience of Montessori. Again, like Camille mentioned, drop them the SMS, send them the message, ask them if they would be willing to share 5 minutes to write a Google review and send them that link. That way you gather a good number of those good reviews, which nowadays you really, really do need. You need to have them on your website and on your Google review. Again, testimonials may require a little bit more time than forms. So offer incentives if possible, or just make sure you're asking parents who you truly think would take their time. The reason they take more time is because they're basically just sharing their experience. It's not so much answering a question or multiple choice. They're gonna have to sit down and reflect on their experience at your school. They're gonna take their time to write. We know some parents leave, a generous paragraph about their experience at your school. So it does take a little more time. So just be mindful of that when you're asking for testimonials. Testimonials are great to ask year round. Again, with feedback, you don't want to be asking for, you don't want to be sending out surveys every month. That might be a bit excessive. Obviously, you always have your ear out for what parents are saying, what they may be bringing to your attention. It's good to always be attentive to that. But surveys, you might want to send out once or twice a year, but testimonials, always be on the lookout for opportunities to ask for testimonials year round, whether it's, summertime and maybe you got a letter from a parent saying, thank you for all you've done this year. I've noticed a really big difference with my child at home because of all the things that they've been learning in the classroom, and I can see their confidence is so much better. That's a great time. Well, I'm so happy you feel that way. Would you be willing to write about your experience and leave us a review? So just constantly feel out for those opportunities. It's great to have them regularly acquired. So just, maybe set yourself an annual goal. I want to have 10 great reviews this year from parents. So that's a good thing to do. Be sending out your Google review links. If you feel that you want to send them out with your surveys, do. Just know that maybe you might reach a parent who's not happy that way if you're just mass sending them and they might leave a negative review. But if you feel that all of your community is happy and there really are very few problematic parents that would take the time to write a negative review, then you can, of course, send them out to your contact list. Maybe you can have your guides observe, who's happy, what parents are happy in the classroom, make a list and send out the Google review links to that list. Again, it's just great to have those feelers out. I wanted to make it a point to use testimonials in your marketing. They're super powerful, and use them across platforms. Post about it on your social media. Put it on your website. Again, put it on your homepage, the homepage of your website. Hear from our parents, or hear from our community members. You post the quotes that they've said about your school. And the reason you should be using this is because prospective parents are looking for reassurance. Think about it that way. They want to hear that other people had success with your school. And testimonials can really be valuable. And it's a free thing that you can do for the most part. You don't have to give away incentives, or you can just simply ask, and it's a free marketing tool pretty much that you can use for your school. Another point I wanted to make, and this is because we have a few resources for this as well, asking your alumni community too. Obviously, you're not going to ask maybe a toddler or primary student, but maybe, a child in lower elementary, or even who has maybe aged out of a program, but you kept in touch with, and they really felt that Montessori gave them a strong foundation into their educational future. It's extremely valuable to have these testimonials on your website. You can put on your website, past, you can put their name, previous alumni. These are very powerful. Even if you want to ask for them to do a video testimonial, that's really impactful. If you want to put that video on your website as well, of a student saying, my Montessori learning gave me the confidence to join these clubs in school. Now I want to run for, school government. I want to be the class president, things like that. Those are great, powerful stories that really express what can be done through Montessori. So always have your feelers out for these things as well, and keep in touch with your alumni. If you need resources to keep in contact with your alumni, build alumni community groups on Facebook or through your website. We have plenty of those on Montessori Thrive. I know we've had a town hall on this, just because it's so valuable to have their stories told. So just wanted to make a note of that here.
I just wanted to mention too, another great place to ask for testimonials is on your donate page. If you I guess this is mostly for nonprofits, but if you have a page on your website, or even just whenever you're doing your fundraising, you can kind of frame a testimonial as a way of giving to the school, because it really does help the schools, grow, the admissions grow and everything. And it's a free way that parents can kind of donate to your school. So if you have a section of your website that's dedicated to donations or giving or an annual fund or something like that, just put a quick link to, hey, you know, here's an easy way to give to our school if you're willing to leave a testimonial, because it really does benefit them as well, because the stronger your school is in terms of having full classrooms and full enrollment and, you know, all of that, the better it is for the parents and the families that are currently there. So anyway, just wanted to offer that up too. It's kind of like it's a way to give to the school in a different kind of way, because a lot of parents are really, they want to help, you know, they want, can I donate, you know, paper towels? Can I, you know, help out in some way? You know, you have committees and things, and this can be just another thing on that list of, hey, you know, if you leave a testimonial, that would really be helpful for us. So kind of pulling it in through that channel, I think, is a great way to do it too.
I think that's a great point, because when parents are on that donate page, it's because they're feeling in a generous mood. They're clearly happy with what your community is doing. So they're probably going to leave a good testimonial. So I think that's a great strategy. And again, it's free to add that to your website. And it really does pay to have testimonials. I cannot stress enough how important it is. And usually parents will take the time. I mean, it's a big part of their life, their child's, you know, educational foundation. So they will be willing to share that. Again, if you need resources on this, we have you covered on Montessori Thrive. We have our testimonial request email template. It's a great little template that you can use. You can attach a Google form to it. You can attach a CRM form to it. And it's basically just, you know, how to ask parents for their time for review. So if you want to download that, it's linked on the presentation, but you can also just search testimonial request in our collection. You can copy and paste that and use the email template. This is a little shift now in our conversation, because feedback, of course, is not only for our clients or our parents in this case, it's also for our staff. And we know that especially nowadays, staff retention is a huge issue, and it's extremely important to check in with our staff, make sure they're happy, make sure they're feeling fulfilled, because I mean, it's definitely the most talked about thing at any of our town halls is staff leaving, it being very difficult to acquire trained guides. So collecting feedback from staff on a regular basis is a great way for you to be able to assess where you can improve and how you can hold on to staff for longer, because we know that there is a lot of challenges here nowadays. So let's talk a little bit about that. Well, before I get started on this, I want to pause and see if anyone has any questions or comments on testimonials. If anything comes to mind later, again, we'll pause at the end for questions, or you can comment in the chat, and our forums are always open 24/7 if you want to ask a question. All right, let's talk about staff exit surveys. So we know it's extremely difficult to say goodbye to employees, especially nowadays, because when a teacher leaves, we're pretty much prepared for the fact that it's going to be very difficult to find a trained guide nowadays, unless you're lucky enough to live next to a Montessori training center, or you found someone that you can sponsor their training. It's going to be a challenge. So exit surveys are a great way for you to understand why staff chose to leave your school community, how you can prevent low staff retention in the future, what areas your school can improve in overall when it comes to workplace culture, and just how your employees are feeling in their work. Are they feeling fulfilled? Do they feel like they have a good state of mental health? Do they feel burnt out? These are questions you need to be asking yourself so that you can avoid people walking out in the future that you want to hold on to. So just a little example here of a staff exit survey. We're going to be uploading this to the collection, but it's just a few questions that you can ask your staff. Again, you can send this out in a form, or you can hold an interview. Maybe you do staff evaluations. Of course, if they're exiting, if they're choosing to leave, maybe you have an exit interview. But again, you can send this to them, ask them, this is really valuable to us. We want to understand why you're leaving. We're sad to see you go. We want to make sure that our staff stay here for a long time and are really happy and feel fulfilled in the work they do. So it's helpful when people give us their feedback. Oh, hold on. I wanted to talk a little bit more briefly before we open it up to questions. Also, when it comes to staff, not just exit surveys, but just checking in with your current staff that doesn't want to leave necessarily. I know a lot of schools, they do, maybe annual evaluations where they look at their staff, they see this is the training you've completed for the year. These are areas you can improve. These are areas you're doing great. Allow them to kind of do that to you in a sense, not necessarily maybe in the same way, but have a few questions for them on how you can improve, how the school can improve. Do you feel overworked? Do you feel guilty taking a day off because there's not, we may not have a substitute, things like that. Those are questions that you need to be asking, especially now, so that you can prevent those types of issues, because we know, again, when a teacher leaves, it is difficult for the school to find a replacement. So by asking those questions, you show that staff member that you do care, you are here to listen, you want to make sure their needs are met as an employee. So all of these points are really important. I'm just gonna go over now to questions, comments. Does anyone have any questions about staff surveys or feedback for staff or anything from the presentation? I'll just pause here. We'll open it up to discussion. Have any of you already sent out surveys for the year? Have gotten any good constructive feedback?
Do you have do you typically send out a survey at the end of every year? You have done Jennifer has done their annual survey. I'm just curious how many of you actually do this on a regular basis, at least annually? Low response rates. Yeah, that's hard. I remember that too. You get maybe send out 100 and you get, 10 back maybe, but I think it's still worthwhile to keep at it, because even the little bit of feedback that you get can be helpful.
Jennifer has a good comment here. We've reduced it to a 3-question survey. What are 3 things we did well this year? Up to 3 suggestions and anything else they want us to know. I think that's a great way to format it, because again, you really want to keep it short and sweet. That encourages responses, and ultimately that sums it up to what you really need to know from your community. So that's great. Thank you for sharing, Jennifer. We have here from Courtney. We send an annual EOI end of year survey, currently awaiting responses for this year. Great. I hope you get some great feedback. Tracy says, if you're only getting 10 out of 100 back, is this a representative sample? Are we making changes based on the minority? And that's a difficult question to answer, because obviously in an ideal situation, you'd be getting everyone's response that would be much more reflective of how everybody's feeling. I think that
I would just say, if there's a pattern, even if you only get those 10 and there's a pattern in them, then it's worthwhile trying to address that to your whole community and saying if it is something that's kind of universally felt. If it just seems like there's one parent that's, has an issue about something, no, clearly you're not going to make changes based on just a couple of people saying something. I think everything has to be taken in context, and also, every situation is different, but I guess my point was more that it's still worthwhile to keep at it, because, even with 10 out of 100, that was just example, like I said, if there's a pattern of a typical, like just say issue or something that keeps coming up, then it should be something to look at, I think. But again, you just always keep asking, not always, but I mean, annually. It's still worthwhile, even if you feel like you're not getting a great response. I think it's, even if you don't, if a parent doesn't return it, I think they still maybe appreciate being asked. And you might not hear about that, but, and then if things don't really, if a parent comes to you the following year and says, blah, 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 and they're unhappy about something, say, well, maybe you should, I mean, you don't want to frame it that way, but, we do ask for feedback every year. And, it would be great if you provided us some feedback when we can, so that we can really look at this. So not that they're not doing it at that time, but you get where I'm going with this. It's just, it's good to ask, regardless of how the response is, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. We have a comment here from Danielle as well. We send it in our spring. We usually have 50% participation, which I would say 50% participation is pretty good, considering, a lot of parents are just overwhelmed these days. And again, as Camille mentioned, if you have one parent out of the 50% who's complaining about something, and then the rest are saying that it's fine, you can probably assume that the majority don't agree with that, even if not 100% responded to the survey. So I think it's a good way to get your feelers out. What I'm noticing is the consistent pattern of we're sending out these surveys either in the spring or closer to the end of the year, which I think is probably the most strategic time to send these. So that's good. I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second, but I just wanted to make a point here for next week. How can we support you? Do you need any more resources? I've dropped my email there. I'm in charge of monitoring and adding new resources to our collection and seeing your requests. So if you need a resource that pertains to testimonial surveys, any more templates, please let me know, or anything else, just go ahead and email me or send in a request. And then next week, we're going to have our final town hall of this summer. We're going to be just checking in with you guys. I want to have some icebreakers, some open conversations, maybe some observations of what we've learned this past year. And I'm also going to share some of our resources to get you in gear for the next academic year. We're taking a break from our town halls just so that people can disconnect and recharge. We know that's really important. People are feeling burnt out. And then we'll be back in September. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just open it up for discussion. I see some more comments here in the chat. Alyssa said, if we use a testimonial as a post on social media, should we write the author's name or should we keep it anonymous? I think if you're going to use it on social media, it might be worth checking with them. On Google review, I believe you can see the user usually. I think you can put it as anonymous on Google review as well. But just check with them, say, we really like what you had to say about our school. We wanted to post it on social media. Would it be okay to use your name, or would you prefer to just put, Montessori school parent instead? Just check with them. I think it's worth it. Yeah, any thoughts on that? Any comments?
Yeah, I was gonna say, or just definitely check with them and then maybe just use the first name so that it's not, too identifying. But if you're going to post it on social media, I definitely would check with, if you want to, I would check with the parent first and just say, hey, are you okay with doing this? If they've put it on Google review, it's already out there. So I think you're fine to copy that as it is. But if it's just something they've submitted to you, then definitely check in with them first. I might have missed. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think you're about to read it as well. Yeah, I might have missed it. Did you comment on what percentage response is typical for surveys? Once upon a time, I thought it was 15%. I don't think we set a specific number on average, but yeah,
that sounds about right.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah.
That's why who was it that said 50%? Danielle, that's pretty good participation, I would say, from parents, because usually it's really hard to get them to respond. We know that they never read our newsletter. Sometimes they ask questions that, they would know the answers to if they were to read our emails. It's tricky to get them more involved in the school. So yeah, I would say 15% probably sounds right. Again, it never hurts to send out those SMSs. If your guides meet with parents, I know a lot of Montessori schools, they'll have observation periods where parents come into the classroom, observe, and meet with teachers. It's great to get your teachers involved in kind of the recruitment for these testimonials. So if you're just noticing that you're not getting the responses that you want, ask your teachers on that one-on-one conversation with the parent, I'm really happy to hear your experience at the school, or if a parent is saying, I see such a difference in my child, have your guide one-to-one ask them, I'm going to send you the link to our to leave our testimonial, because it really helps our school grow when parents share their stories and experiences. And of course, if the parent's happy, they've had a good meeting, they had a good observation period with their child, they're going to be happy to write a good review. So if you want to get that percentage up higher when it comes to testimonials, that's just an idea.
Yeah, I think that 15% is, I was thinking more for surveys. But yeah, and regarding testimonials, a lot of times parents just don't think about it. Like, it's not on their radar to leave a review. And so just most of them, if they're happy, they're happy to leave a positive review. So a lot of times it just comes down to asking. And any one parent's only going to be asked once, right? So I guess I'm just saying that, you really should, don't be shy about asking, because it's just probably something that they're happy to do, but it's just not on their radar to do it. So,
and maybe if you want more people to participate in the survey, you can kind of, again, do some things to recruit those responses. You can post about it on social media, have you filled out our end of year survey? We'd love to hear about your experience this year as a parent in our community. Again, one of the comments here was great about making it 3 questions. I mean, imagine posting that on Twitter, we did, have you answered our 3 questions about how your experience was this year? If not, you can click the link and fill out the form. And again, it's anonymous, so they can put whatever they really want and they don't have to hold back. And then you can get that response. You can also get maybe teachers during carpool to remind people, give us feedback so we know, so we can start thinking about what we want to do better next year. So again, if you really want to get that feedback, it's worth kind of constantly recruiting for it. Any other questions, comments, ideas before we head off? I don't want to keep you guys here. I know you guys are busy with end of year stuff.
End of year surveys.
Yeah, as I said earlier, we look forward to seeing you next week if you guys are going to be joining us for our last town hall before September. Join us. It'll be fun. It'll be casual. It'll be kind of I don't want to say icebreaker, because we've been doing these town halls for more than 2 years now, but it's a great chance to just, converse with your fellow Montessori leaders, talk about, what you've learned this year, what you have that you're excited about for next year, and then just go over some resources that can help your school. We've had a lot of new resources in the past year that have been contributed by schools, requested by you guys. So I look forward to sharing some of those. All right. Well, yeah. If you have any questions later, feel free to use our forum as well. We're always monitoring that. So yeah, I hope that you all have a great rest of your week and a great Thursday. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, everybody.